So Kaiser Soze, what did I say?
Kaiser Soze.
Kaiser what? Soze. Okay.
Zay.
Fuck, I don't even know where I was.
Like
now.
Zay.
Or was it Kaiser Soze?
No.
Soze.
No.
Kaiser Soze. Fuck. Okay. Or was it? Okay.
Zay.
Soze.
Soze. Like Sammy Sosa. With Soze.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down to Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Chat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash, Do You Want to Dance Finneran?
Hi, y'all.
And Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
Each week, we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, or want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatthemovies.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. That's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, and Watchmen. Find all that information and past episodes at shatontv.com. And finally, if you'd like to hang out with us live all week long, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatthemovies.com/Twitch, where we play video games, host watch parties, and have special events, including me playing Destiny 2, which I'm trying desperately to get back into and having a very hard time. So if you got pointers for me, I'm at Gene_Lyons_ on Twitters. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing today?
Gene, this week we are doing not one of our traditional commissions, but over the last year, some of our listeners have been wonderful and set up fantasy football leagues, fantasy premier leagues, and fantasy NBA leagues. So this week we are doing one of the winners of the league who got to choose their own movie. And this week we will be reviewing the 1995 mystery thriller, The Usual Suspects.
Well, Mr. Cobs wrote in and said, "Hey, gang, thanks for taking my commission for The Usual Suspects. I remember the first time I saw this flick like it was yesterday, sitting in my then best buddy's house with his two parents smoking like fiends. It was the early 90s, and getting chills with the big reveal at the end. This is before we knew all that we know now about Spacey, so hopefully that won't influence our viewing today. I was going to try and write this long-winded bullshit about how well I remember it and what it meant to me, but much like my selection of this movie, I'm trying to not overthink it. See, I was stressing so much about what to pick, especially considering this honor is because I won the inaugural Shat on Football League. Mucho pressure, verdad? Then I had the realization that I don't care that much. Look, I mean, I appreciate all you guys do and love being part of the Shat Heads. Trademark on Discord and Twitch, etc. But believe it or not, I don't listen to the Movies Pod or any of the TV series for your brilliant insights and movie reviews in earnest. I listen because I love your chemistry, your comedy, your different perspectives, etc. I don't really care what score you give this movie, although I expect it'll be around a 1.75. I care about you three lovable monkeys chit-chatting and bullshitting around and going wherever your meandering, disjointed conversation goes. Plus, I love your quirks. Like, got a good cop scene or fight scene? Gene Lyons is sure to shit in that. Let's play a game. How long until Ashley mentions New Orleans? 1 minute, 40 seconds? How many references to the military will Big D make? 6? 7? Also, what point in the episode will you decide to start being actual movie reviewers and start seriously dissecting plot points and camera angles? Point is, I know I can make these dig because we're basically fam now. Love you guys and can't wait to hear the pod. Not for the movie review, but for you bunch. Much love and tacos from San Francisco, Nick Cobs.
Well, Nick Cobs, aside from being the inaugural Shat on Football League champion, you are also our favorite chef and a very good friend. And Nick, actually, we were talking earlier today, and he said that he hasn't seen this movie in 20 years. So he's going to watch it with a steak and a martini while his family is out of town, which I think might have increased my enjoyment a little bit. Well, The Usual Suspects is a 1995 mystery thriller directed by Bryan Singer and written by Christopher McQuarrie. It stars Stephen Baldwin, Gabriel Byrne, Benicio del Toro, Kevin Pollak, Chazz Palminteri, Pete Postlewaite, and Kevin Spacey. The plot follows the interrogation of Roger Verbal Kint, a small-time con man who is one of only 2 survivors of a massacre and fire on a ship docked at the port of Los Angeles. The film was shot on a $6 million budget and won an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay and Best Supporting Actor. The Writers Guild of America ranked this film as having the 35th greatest screenplay of all time. So Big D, Ash, we always ask what your memories are of the film we're reviewing. We'll start with you, Big D. What are your memories of The Usual Suspects?
I can vividly remember this movie. This is one of that I can tell you exactly how I watched it. This came out on my birthday in 95, but I did not watch it then. I saw it in November. There was a theater in Midtown Manhattan that would do like new movies when they kind of had run their course in the theaters. It was like a discount theater. It was like $4 or $5. And a group of friends, it was a Sunday, we were drinking and eating wings and watching football all day. When the games ended, we're like, hey, let's go watch a movie. This sounds great. And I remember being blown away by the double reveal at the end. Like you think you see the answer, then, oh no, it's another answer. And it might have been because it was the first time I could remember seeing that in a film, or because we had been drinking all day. But this movie blew me away, and I really enjoyed the first time I watched it.
Yeah, I don't remember the first time I saw this, Big D, certainly not with the degree of clarity that you do. But I do recall that The Usual Suspects was my first introduction to both Benicio del Toro and Kevin Spacey. And I just remember thinking that these 2 guys were so cool. This kind of led to my love of this rash of neo-noir ensemble caper movies that we got like in the 90s and the 2000s. It was a really fun genre where you'd get like, 4 or 5 ultra cool guys, super slick stylistic shoots, and then, some sort of crime that was, singular, generally not too crazy and like sadistic. So you kind of sympathized with those characters and were rooting for them.
I just remember thinking this movie was super cool when I was growing up. I think that there was a year, and I don't remember how close this happened, but I saw Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, and this like all at the same time. I feel like they all kind of run together for me. And I know the other 2 are Tarantino films and that this isn't, but there was something about finally getting films like this that made me feel cool. It made me feel older. It made me feel kind of grown up. And they are all kind of movies with just these cool dudes in them, like with these really cool dudes that aren't like the typical guys from the other movies that were being made from this time period. They looked different. They sounded different. They dressed different. And I became obsessed with this type of film. And I know that Nick mentioned, Kevin Spacey. So let's go ahead and, get the big pink sexually assaulting elephant out of the room here. It didn't affect my viewing of this at all, which I don't know if that disturbed me as much as it did just surprise me, because I used to be obsessed with Kevin Spacey. I thought he was like an amazing actor. And I have nothing but positive memories about The Usual Suspects and Spacey's involvement in it. And so this was one of the films that I was really looking forward to reveal, because it's one of the only films where the reveal got me, like where I actually didn't know it was coming. And I was excited to go back to this one.
All right. Well, 26 years later, let's see if it holds up. It's time for that trailer.
Usually, when there is a crime, there is a motive.
I want to know why. 27 men died on that pier for what looks to be $91 million worth of dope that wasn't there.
Usually, when there is a lineup, there's only one real suspect.
This whole thing was a shakedown. And there's no way they'd line 5 felons in the same room.
But this is not the usual crime. This is not the usual motive.
He was in the harbor killing many men.
Kaiser Soze!
He saw Kaiser Soze.
And these are not the usual suspects. Keaton.
I'm a businessman.
McManus.
There's nothing that can't be done.
Hockney.
What, do you got a team of monkeys working around the clock on this?
Fenster.
Flip you for real.
Verbal Kint.
Roger, really. People say I talk too much.
He doesn't know what you want to know. I don't think he does. Not exactly. But there's a lot more to his story, believe me.
In a world where nothing is what it seems.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world
I know he's here.
he didn't exist.
You've got to look beyond the usual suspects.
I'm smarter than you. And I'm gonna find out what I want to know, whether you like it or not.
I work for Kaiser Soze. He feels you owe him. He does not expect all of you to live, but those of you who do will have $91 million.
It was Kaiser Soze, Agent Kuyan. I mean, the devil himself.
I'm telling you, it's Kaiser Soze!
There is no Kaiser Soze.
Keaton always said, I don't believe in God, but I'm afraid of him. Well, I believe in God. And the only thing that scares me is Kaiser Soze.
Hardened criminal Dean Keaton lies badly wounded on a ship. He is confronted by a mysterious figure he calls Kaiser, who shoots him dead and sets fire to the ship. The next day, the police recover 27 bodies and only 2 survivors. Arkash Kovacs, a Hungarian mobster hospitalized with severe burns, and Roger Verbal Kint, a con artist with cerebral palsy. U.S. Customs agent Dave Kuyan flies to Los Angeles to interrogate Verbal, while Kovacs is visited in the hospital by FBI agent Jack Baer. The events that led Keaton, Verbal, and their associates onto the ship are then described by Verbal via flashback.
So a lot of times when we watch movies, the 90s and the 80s were so stylized that opening credits can be really ridiculous, like The Color of Money, like, you know, One Crazy Summer. There's lots of really awful moments. And this was kind of an outlier for me in that respect, because I really enjoyed the setup of this film. I thought that the beginning still really worked. I like the way that the opening starts with Gabriel Byrne being injured, and there's this whole pile of stuff like ropes and crates and all of that. It's like Chekhov's pile of shit, right? That we're going to come back to at some point. And I really enjoyed it because as you start to go through the movie, it makes sense. You assume that that's where Virgil is hiding behind, right? Like that's where you assume his lookout point is. And for me, I don't know about y'all, but I thought the opening was still really interesting. I thought it was intense, and it kind of sets you up for this mystery film, this noir film that you're about to enjoy.
And that's a typical tactic that you'll see in mysteries, right? You see kind of the end product and then you're left to piece it all together. I feel like during the mid 90s, this was very in vogue. And Ash, you know, you mentioned Pulp Fiction, which did this in 1994, but I think did it so much better. Shooting out of sequence is a Quentin Tarantino thing, but I feel like he's more proficient at doing it. And this almost felt a little amateurish to me. It was just a little too stylized.
The way the story is told is more than just a stylistic choice, okay? We are seeing the story unfold as Verbal is spinning his tale for the detective. So I started out thinking, oh my, this is such style over substance. Every shot is like beautiful and the camera's panning over the ship and the smoke comes up. And I'm like, shit, is this whole movie going to be like this? But then it kicked in and I said, this is intentional. We are seeing a noir story told by a character who is an unreliable narrator.
Yeah, and Big D, normally I'm a big fan of that noir throwback vibe. I think of like Mulholland Drive or HBO's new Perry Mason, which I absolutely loved, or even Sin City, you know, something as little off the wall as that. But in this movie, it feels restrictive. And I buy what you're saying. There is a bit of embellishment when we get to, you know, Verbal's telling of the story, but that doesn't account for all of it because the movie itself feels like you're watching one of your friends who's dating a Fedora Guy, you know, like the guy who like goes to the bar and orders a Manhattan just because it's the cool thing to do. And like you go over to their house and they insist on playing records, even though they don't have a record of anything you want to fucking listen to. And my evidence for this is Giancarlo Esposito, right? This guy, we've seen him as Gus in Breaking Bad. He's good. We saw him in Maximum Overdrive, you know, somewhat smaller character. But on screen, he looked like he was being coached in real time. Like he would smoke a cigarette and turn his head at just the right angle. And he's wearing his little hat and he's moving very stiffly. And that's not a flashback. That's not Verbal telling the story. That's just him being a fucking weirdo. And the only thing I could chalk that up to is the director. Bryan Singer is notoriously hard to work with. He was fired from the set of Bohemian Rhapsody. He doesn't show up sometimes. He has difficulty with the actors. I could almost feel his hand on this movie, making the actors uncomfortable. Everybody felt so. Chazz Palminteri, who is a genius in A Bronx Tale, just felt dead here.
In his defense, maybe Bohemian Rhapsody wouldn't have been the total fucking awful movie that it was if Bryan Singer hadn't have been fired, because it was pretty terrible. But I do agree that some of the heavy-handedness, it definitely comes through. And what's funny is, like, I didn't even recognize Giancarlo Esposito because he didn't look like himself. Exactly what you're saying, because he's got such like a cool swag about him and other things, like as Gus, right? Like nobody's been a cooler, like calm, cool, collected bad dude than him in that show. And I do agree that that's kind of lost here, but I did like a bit of the cheese that noir brings. Like noirs are kind of cheesy, right? Like they have those moments with like these crazy, saxophone, musical interludes, and it just kind of works. And there's this one shot in particular where they pan up and they show that the boat is burning, and it's this reveal that it was the same boat that we were on in the exposition, and like that kind of stuff I thought worked well. That tonality was great, but I could have done with like 80 less fedoras for sure.
Well, and Bryan Singer, I don't know if we cut him a little bit more slack or we're more offended. Do you know the origin of this story? So he had won a film festival with his first movie, Public Access. He was trying to come up with what his second project would be, and he was reading an article in Spy Magazine, and they used the term The Usual Suspects. He thought that was kind of cool. So in his head then, he developed the poster, which was going to be a lineup. So he went to another film festival, and they said, hey, what's your next project? And he goes, well, it's a story about criminals who get put together in a lineup. There was no script. There was no story. This entire movie is based on a poster. So I kind of now understand why things look a little more style over substance.
Well, 6 weeks earlier in New York City, Keaton, Verbal, and 3 other career criminals, Michael McManus, Fred Fenster, and Todd Hockney, meet in a police lineup after a truck hijacking that none of them participated in. The newly assembled group decide to pull a heist to get revenge on the NYPD. They rob a jewel smuggler being escorted by corrupt cops, netting millions in emeralds and getting over 50 cops arrested. Their next heist goes badly, and the men learn the job was arranged by a lawyer named Kobayashi. They meet Kobayashi, who says he arranged for their arrests in New York and that his employer, Kaiser Soze, a mysterious Turkish crime lord from whom each of the men has unwittingly stolen, has ordered them to raid a ship operated by Argentinian drug dealers.
So Big D, you talked about how it's all based on like the cover, right? Like them being in that lineup. And I'm sorry, but this lineup scene still really worked for me. I thought it was amazing and such a great, just cinematic moment. Like when we remember movies from the 90s, like this is a scene I think everybody remembers. And the reason why I think it works so well is it's this really beautiful introduction to the characters as they read that line. And the actors, all 5 of them, did such a great job of saying cocksucker so differently that just in the way they say cocksucker, it gives like this characterization, like who they are, and like you get them. And I think it's the best scene of the movie, and it does set up what's coming. And more importantly, I think that in rewatch, it was also the worst scene for me because it shows what this film could have been. Like this could have been like the most incredible crime movie ever because of the characters that they create here, but they don't follow up on that promise that's shown because this scene is incredible. And then we'll get into it in a second. Well, then what they do with all the characters is so lackluster. And I didn't remember that. I remembered this scene and the reveal. I didn't remember any of the shit that happens in between, which I think says a lot about this movie.
That entire lineup was outtakes. The serious versions of those didn't quite work. So they had them doing a little funnier takes with the cocksucker. And then Benicio del Toro is notorious for having bad gas. So he was farting on set. And that's what led to the funny takes that they used. But we're reading something into it. But I don't think that we could downplay Benicio del Toro as an actor, what he's become, or his portrayal of Fenster. It is the most memorable character for me. That the way he delivers the dialogue and the lines he has. In an interview, they said, what did you think of the script when you first read it? He said, I realized I was the character whose only purpose was to die. to be killed by Kaiser Soze. So I'm going to have fun with it. So he came up with that little verbal style, and his lines like, oh, is that the story about the prostitute with dysentery? Or what's with the lineup? I had a finger up my ass. It is so memorable and so funny. And forget about my imitation of that. He's much better.
Your Galactic Trade Federation accent? What's going on there? But I don't understand why they killed Fenster. So, I mean, you have a young Benicio del Toro on set and you kill him off this early in the movie. He's easily the most charismatic character in the film and the best performance in the film. I totally forgotten he gets killed. It's less than halfway through the story.
I completely forgot about this and I was so bummed. And I think it's just a testament to Benicio del Toro because like he's the character I remember the most from this movie other than verbal. And he's in it for like 25 minutes, I feel like. And he looks so fucking cool in this movie. I forgot because like when I think of Benicio del Toro, I think of two films. I think of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and I think of that movie 21 Grams. And he is, you know, older in those movies. He's lived some life and y'all, he's so baby faced here. I mean, he looks like a child and he steals every single part of every scene that he's in, from the way he flips his collar to the way that he smokes his cigarettes. Like we needed a lot more Benicio in this movie.
And to add insult to injury, they kill off Fenster, but we get Keaton for the whole movie. And I have nothing against Gabriel Byrne. Admittedly, I haven't seen him in much else, but this guy has no zip to his performance. I kept thinking how much better this movie would be with anybody, Robert De Niro, Richard Gere, even Brad Pitt, somebody to lead this group and have some panache, some swagger, maybe a little bit of a struggle between, you know, being on the straight and narrow and going back into a life of crime. This guy is just dead on his feet.
Gabriel Byrne was the original sexy priest in the great classic Stigmata, where he plays the priest that falls in love with the girl that gets her hands and feet all stabbied by Jesus. And he's just as dry in that film. I think Gabriel Byrne is Keaton in every movie that he's ever been in. And I'm looking at the poster right now. And for those of you who haven't seen it, everybody looks like a badass on this poster, except for Gabriel Byrne, who's in like an ill-fitting, like, kind of canary yellow linen suit. And that I think sums up his performance in this. He's just too old, maybe he's too young. I don't know what it is. And I think a lot of it is the script. And I know this movie is famous for its script, but I think what happens here is you've got another movie that does this better, which is Heat. I think Heat takes this character that's trying to have a redemption and then has to go back to the life that he knows. Like that type of character development, I think is what they were going for here with Keaton. And I think it would have been great for us to see more of him as the non-criminal. You would have had more sympathy for him. You would have maybe had a bigger reveal at the end, but instead we get a shitty dinner where for some reason his lawyer girlfriend is speaking French, and then we get a quick scene with his lawyer girlfriend, and that's it. Like it just isn't enough.
I have an easier time believing that Kevin Spacey instills fear in people, that they will just run and know death is imminent, or that Al Pacino in Heat is some kind of a sex symbol. I believe that more than that Keaton is some badass. Every scene he's in, when he's threatening Kobayashi, give me one reason I shouldn't kill you. And I'm like, yeah, because you suck. You couldn't even shoot the guy in the car who pulled a gun on you. He did not instill fear in anyone on set.
Nope.
Now, Nick Cobs predicted that I would have something to say about the cops in this movie. And yeah, I do. So, Big D, you talked about how dumb the heist was in Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man. Oh, it's totally unbelievable. They used flags to just move this truck over to this place, and then they robbed it. And what was their escape plan? This is so much dumber. In this movie, to get back at the cops for being framed for a heist, they stage a heist against cops. Who writes this shit? There is no way that criminals would say, you know what we ought to do while the cops' eyes are on us? Rob the cops, because that's justice. And there's no way the cops don't fucking shoot them during this heist. I don't know one cop that's going to sit there and get fucking robbed in their squad car.
Hold on, I got a bigger problem. 50 cops were taken down by this one incident. Reporters supposedly showed up on scene before the other police did. Number one, I don't buy that. And then 50 of them. How quick was this trial? Did the union just sit back? That was kind of convenient.
Also, Verbal is known as a con man. And they're all like, who's going to come up with the plan of what we should do? I know. Let's trust the con man. You know that McManus is going to walk. Come on.
Yeah.
Verbal then tells Kuyan a legend about Kaiser Soze. He was a small-time drug runner who murdered his own family when they were being held hostage by Hungarian mobsters, and he became a fearsome urban myth. Concluding his story, Verbal reveals Fenster was killed trying to flee. The men then threatened Kobayashi, only to accept the assignment when he threatened their loved ones. The men attacked the ship during the night, killing several Argentinian and Hungarian gangsters before discovering there was no cocaine. Hockney, McManus, Keaton, and a prisoner on the ship were killed by an unseen assailant. The mysterious figure then set fire to the ship as Verbal looked on from a hiding place on the dock.
Now, everybody remembers Kaiser Soze. The name has become synonymous with like badass crime lords, right? But I did not remember this flashback scene of setting this legend of who Soze was. And I could not concentrate on this story because of that fucking awful wig that they have on the guy that is supposedly playing Soze here. This entire scene looked like a flashback of a satire of a film like this one. It was ridiculous. It was laughable. And it completely took me out of the story. The guy looked like an off-brand, like Pablo Escobar trying to play a Turkish dude. And he was somehow slightly both like Arab and Mexican while sitting there shooting his own wife and kids. And then I couldn't help but go, okay, I know the reveal. I know that, spoiler alert, Spacey is this dude. Is that Kevin Spacey in that weird Jesus wig? I mean, I didn't remember any of it and I thought it was terrible.
That's basically a description of me. I thought for a second it was Top Dollar from The Crow. I was like, wait a second, is that? No.
That would have been incredible.
Big D, this might speak to your theory that it's meant to illustrate how ludicrous the Kaiser Soze stories are, right? He's supposed to look goofy.
But can I just say something to that? I don't buy that because we're supposed to fear Soze, right? Like we're supposed to understand why the dude is in the bed going, Kaiser Soze, over and over again and like choking while he's giving his description because he's so terrified. We have to buy that Verbal is a badass at the end for the reveal to work. This is the dumbest fucking way to do that.
Yeah, you're right. It would have made a lot more sense if this movie's going along. It's kind of stylish. It's kind of funny. There's some levity. We're getting like these characters. And then we just have this like horribly terrifying, like literally scary scene of just ultra violence that snaps you into like a realization that this guy's no fucking joke.
But he looked like a discount Fabio. His hair, it was not like robust. It was not thick and healthy like yours.
No, it was a shitty wig.
It was really bad. And also, why did they choose to show the scene where he kills a child and his wife because he couldn't live with himself? Why don't they just kill the family and then show him rampaging against the other members of the mob?
Guys, John Wick. We got a whole series off of a dude whose dog was killed. Like, he would have had to kill one child and we would have bought that Soze, like, killed the whole mob, right? John Wick kills, like, entire people, like, groups of people over 3 movies because of his dog. I mean, that would have been enough. He didn't have to shoot his wife and shoot his children to show how badass he is. And I'm just so unaffected.
Yeah, what was he punishing? But we have to now talk about the fact here. The unreliable narrator touching every aspect of this film. And we have to question, what are we seeing? There's a combination of events. Some of them are real, the ones that we can independently verify that either happen outside of verbal Kint or things that are third-party characters or that we have some evidence to back them up. Then there's another 2 sets of story we're seeing that Verbal is telling both. Some of them are completely fabricated. These are like the ones where Verbal is describing seeing Kaiser Soze like peeing off the boat and putting out the kerosene. That's obviously a complete fabrication. But then also there's the sets of scenes where the characters' names are changed by the different artifacts that we're seeing in the office. So we have to now kind of dissect things as to which of these are we seeing.
Yeah, and you're led to question also like when he was there and when he wasn't. So I think the whole past is fuzzy there, right? Because there's certain scenes where he appears that it doesn't quite make sense. But also you wonder then other times where you see him in a scene and you're like, would he really tell the cops that he did that? Is that the truth of what happened? And I wish I had kind of paid closer attention during those scenes to see if there were tells, that kind of gave it away as to what was real and what wasn't. Kind of like we talk about with Westworld, what's a simulation and what's not.
Because even the scenes we go back to the lineup, the famous part of the movie, I question whether he was actually there, because Detective Kuyan is the one who arrested Keaton. And he's also at the lineup, but yet when he meets Verbal in LA, he doesn't recognize him from the lineup.
And again, it's just better movies that come after it, right? Like, I think if we would have had a little bit of like a Tyler Durden thing going on here, where like in the scenes we're seeing that Verbal's there, but like he wasn't actually in some of these scenes, like he inserted himself at the end, like he's not actually there when Kobayashi comes in, or something like that. I think that would have been a lot more interesting than what we have here, but I just don't know if there's any way to tell. And unfortunately, like with that scene with the weirdo wig, like I wonder if that's just what Singer wanted. Like he wanted it all to just, he just chose really cool things off the wall to change the details at the end.
Well, the question is, whose vision are we seeing? Is that the detective's vision of what he thinks a badass Hungarian dude who'd kill his family looks like, or Verbal's version of what he would look like?
Well, Kuyan deduces that Keaton must be Soze, as the prisoner killed on the ship was Arturo Marquez, a smuggler who escaped prosecution by claiming he would identify Soze. Marquez was being represented by a lawyer named Edie Finneran, who has also been recently murdered. Kuyan claims that the Argentinians took Marquez to sell him to Soze's Hungarian rivals. Keaton then used the assault so he could kill Marquez personally and fake his own death. Verbal finally confesses that Keaton had been behind everything, but he refuses to testify in court. Verbal's bail is posted, and he is released.
For me, the sad part about all of this is that once that misdirect is presented, with Keaton as Soze, when Kuyan comes to that realization, I got really bummed, because it's almost like they had to do an edit at the end, because it feels like the movie is set up for Keaton to be Soze. Like that reveal just makes more sense. And I think that if they had done a better job with Keaton's character, that actually would have wound up being more sinister, because think about how he would have been playing them when he saw Edie there, and he wouldn't have cared that she was going to be killed, but he made them think he was. And he would have just looked like this manipulative asshole that Soze is supposed to be. And so kind of in a way, I wish he had been it. Feels like the whole movie was set up and Singer was like, no, we're going to have a double reveal. It's going to be a double blind. Fuck you to the audience. And it's going to be amazing. And audiences in 95 bought it. But Keaton as Soze may have been a better film.
Gabriel Byrne bought it too. When he finished filming, he thought he was Kaiser Soze.
Well, moments later, Kuyan realizes that Verbal fabricated his entire story by piecing together details from random items in the cluttered office. Meanwhile, Verbal walks outside, gradually losing his limp and flexing his supposedly disabled hand. As Kuyan pursues Verbal, a fax arrives at the police station with the artist's facial composite of Soze. The picture resembles Verbal,
kinda,
revealing that he was Soze all along. Verbal enters a car driven by Kobayashi, concluding in Verbal's earlier description of Soze. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled is convincing the world he didn't exist. And like that, he's gone.
I think that line is still an amazing line. And I think Kevin Spacey's delivery of that line is still like bone chilling, and it works. Everything leading up to that line, for those of you who've not seen it in forever, doesn't. I remember when I was young, I thought this reveal was brilliant. It was that moment where you go, oh shit, right? Everybody was so shocked by it. But of course, the cup says Kobayashi. And of course, all the names are on the board. It's just such a flimsy setup upon rewatch, you guys. There is no way that in that 20 seconds, that cop is going to put it all together and just know that you're going to see quartet and you're going to see that little bitty tiny writing next to the lady who's overweight. It just isn't going to happen. And secondly, that sketch looks nothing fucking like Kevin Spacey. He looked like the sketch of the dude that kills with a hook in I Know What You Did Last Summer. That guy looked more like that sketch than Kevin Spacey did. And I also don't know then why that whole plot point with the dude with the head wrap, which by the way, also looks like Gabriel Byrne. I kept pausing, and like Amazon will show you the cast. I was convinced the Hungarian was Gabriel Byrne for a hot minute because it looks like Gabriel Byrne. It wasn't. But that whole plot point with that guy is not needed. And then the final thing I'll say about this is like Verbal's reveal also isn't fun because we know nothing about him. Literally the only thing this movie tells us about him is that, in his words, he's a cripple. In everybody's words in the movie, that he's a cripple. That's it. He's your classic narrator that all of a sudden becomes a character, and in storytelling that doesn't work. It makes no sense. And worse is the reveal of like, oh wow, he's crippled, but he's not actually crippled. His whole identity is that he's crippled. So him faking it is really fucked up, you guys.
Hey, he's really invested in it. Kevin Spacey super glued his fingers together when he was, and he actually wore down his shoe, so his drag looked authentic. But it makes no sense. Keyser Soze is supposed to be this big, powerful kingpin, right? He can't go hire some Colombian hitmen. He's going to actually insert himself secretly after playing the long con to pretend he's disabled, join this crew, put himself at risk on the boat with the only person who can identify him. Wouldn't Keyser Soze stay far away from that boat and get some hit team to come in and take it out?
Why the fuck did he have to grab the trench coat and the fedora from the room with the dude he shot? Like, all of it makes no sense. It makes no sense.
Even in the end, we don't know. Was it Keaton? Was it Kobayashi? Was it Verbal? We don't know. It could be any of the three, and they want to keep it a little mysterious so that we do get a definitive answer. In the beginning of the film, when we are seeing it where Keyser Soze is from behind, and we notice that he has a gold watch and a gold cigarette lighter. This is the exact two items that Verbal Kint pulls out of his pocket when he's walking and getting into the Jaguar.
Yeah.
So the first scene we know is accurate. It is true. The second scene at the end tells you definitively that's who it is.
And that very accurate sketch that was done.
I thought the sketch could have been D.B. Cooper, the guy who hijacked the airliner and jumped out over the Northwest.
Maybe.
I don't normally do this, but I'm going to paste a caveat onto this entire review. So those of you who are at home, they'll be like, bullshit. I call bullshit on all of you because you fell for this the first time. And the only reason none of this works for you is because you've seen it before and you know the reveal. I think that's valid. Because once you know Verbal is Keyser Soze and that he doesn't have cerebral palsy, the movie's really hard to fully enjoy. In 1995, we all thought Kevin Spacey was the greatest actor alive for pulling off this role. On rewatch, his performance suddenly seems like over the top. Like when he's trying to be feeble and he's like, oh, I was scared. And you're just like, this is ridiculous, right? And I can't tell if that's because I know the twist. And I am totally open to the fact that if I had watched this movie for the first time ever, for this review, I might see it differently, right? That we're seeing all the flaws because we know how it ends. We know the secret behind it. That is a totally valid criticism of this review, but I can't separate myself from it. Now that I have seen it, there's no unseeing it.
Yeah, it's the Sixth Sense effect, right? M. Night Shyamalan thought we would all go back and watch The Sixth Sense like 20 more times. He'd be like, wow, that's how we knew he was dead. No, once you know he's dead, it's not a fun movie to watch anymore. And I think the same is true here. I think that you're spot on, Gene, that once the reveal's done, the movie's kind of ruined in that way. And I still thought that the shot, the way that they shoot it with him beginning to walk correctly, I remembered that moment for me the first time I watched it and be like, what? What's his foot doing? Oh my God. Oh my God. Like in that reveal as they pan up to his body and he kind of shakes his hand out and gets the lighter out. I remember those feelings. And Spacey does play it great. He is good in this movie. He's good in almost everything he's in. But the zest, that fun, it just isn't there when the surprise is already ruined.
See, but I think when you go back and watch The Sixth Sense again, you can pick up scenes that now make sense what you saw. We don't get any of that here. There's no scenes where you're picking up, like Gene said, oh, wow, there we can see he wasn't there. He's injecting himself into the scene. There is no reward for watching this a second time. The Sixth Sense, there is some.
Is there?
Yeah.
Bruce Willis is still dead, and Haley Joel Osment still sees dead people. It's kind of the same.
All right. Well, now is the time we give our wipe score for The Usual Suspects. It's our way of telling you how many wipes it would take to get this movie off your respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is a heist gone completely right, where you bust 50 cops and get away scot-free in the middle of the day in New York City. Totally cool. 5 wipes is an absolute disaster. It's dying on a flaming boat after being shot and peed on. Ash, we'll start with you. What is your wipe score for The Usual Suspects?
So, I mean, the movie's still good. I mean, I know we talked about a lot of issues with it, but, for the time period, this movie is still like a really important film in terms of like what crime movies would begin to do in the 90s. And I think that the secondary characters in this, like Benicio del Toro, are great. Y'all, Stephen Baldwin, we didn't talk about him at all, but like this is the best he's ever been, is in this movie.
Yeah, I was calling him Sleeper Baldwin because I was like, wow, he looks good. He's enjoyable. He can move, like good action. How are we missing out on this guy?
Yeah, I mean, he was great. He looked good and he was great. And Kevin Spacey is still really great in this movie. I think that the issue here is that some stories are meant to be movies, some are meant to be short films, some are meant to be like short stories. And this would be great as like a short story, like a little piece that's written in like The Guardian or The New Yorker. I think it would have worked. As a full movie, there just isn't enough meat there. So it's kind of meh. And I think the testament to it, though, is that people remember the reveal. That's why this movie is important, is because the way they flip the reveal, the way they set it up, the way they surprise the audience, that was the moment. That's its importance. And the rest of the movie is forgettable, but the lineup and the end are really fantastic. So I'm going to give it a very generous 2 wipes.
I'm right there with you, Ash, on the 2 wipes. This is certainly a better than average movie, but it's not the masterpiece I remember from my teens. The screenplay admittedly is good. I mean, I think it deserves a lot of respect for how it was written, and the dialogue, I think, is strong. But the acting feels stiff. The plot is convoluted, as you mentioned, Big D, without being clever. And the gang leader could use an upgrade. You got to do better than Gabriel Byrne.
I think the first time I saw this, it's a 1 wipe movie. The second time I've seen it, it's a 2.5 wipe movie. It's average. I think it's style over substance. The cast was very young. These were nobodies. It was $6 million, and they turned into some of the best actors in Hollywood. I mean, Kevin Spacey, we didn't even touch on that. He won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor for this role. Now, I don't know if it was because his role was that great or he was up against shit. He was up against Brad Pitt from 12 Monkeys, James Cornwell from Babe, Tim Roth from Rob Roy, and Ed Harris from Apollo 13. The only reason I'm giving it 2.5 wipes is because the first time around, that misdirect, whoa, it's groundbreaking. But you go back and you watch it, the buildup, it wasn't earned. And it's definitely not earned a rewatch, so it's 2.5 for me.
All right, so we've gotten some criticism recently about my math skills. Fair criticism. I've been fucking up my math, but I checked this one. 2 plus 2 plus 2.5 is 6.5. Divided by 3 is 2.16 repeating wipes for The Usual Suspects.
Gene with a score of 2.16 wipes. That now ties this in the 106 spot with Home Alone, Major League, The Goonies, Under Siege, The Sandlot, and From Dusk Till Dawn. So there's a big grouping there at 106.
I think it's fair. All of them are entertaining movies that aren't exceptional.
Right. That are worth watching either in the time that they came out or watching for the first time, but maybe not revisiting.
And especially not watching with young boys who could be influenced by the sexual assaults that occur on screen. Looking at you, Sandlot.
It's an incredible film. I don't know why I'm always having to fucking defend Clue, Grease 2, The Fifth Element, and The Sandlot on this podcast.
I don't know why that list just keeps getting bigger, Ash.
Yeah, no.
Maybe because y'all are wrong so much.
Well, the voicemail has been ringing off the hook, so let's take some time to get through those today. Big D, let's start off with John from Oklahoma.
Hey, what's up, Shat Crew? This is John from Oklahoma. I wanted to call and get a couple of things out there. I'll put out my chest, man. I love you guys. Found you during the pandemic. I drive trucks now, and I listen to all of your you guys' podcasts and everything. The way you review movies is awesome. I will say that you are way far superior now than you were starting off. I love the 3 of you guys. I'm very loyal. So I started off with, Ash, Gene, and Big D. And I love you guys. I hate Roger. His voice irritates me. He sounds like a bad version of Dan Cook.
Wow.
And he just shitted on movies that I like. Oh, I have another question. I'm all over the place. I'm a little high, guys. We got good weed in Oklahoma. But question to Ash and to Gene. In Lost Boys, when David was the main guy, but he was hiding and Max was supposed to be the big bad, right? I think I'm saying that right. But who sired them? Like the other vampires I didn't know. Because if you were sired by David, the main vampire, wouldn't your loyalty be to him? So when Max told you to do something, you would say fuck off. And you would know that it wasn't him that was the main, the big bad. I don't know. Just a thought that I had. Love vampires. That's why I love you guys. I'm going to go back and watch Interview with Vampire, just to prepare myself for this upcoming week episode. I know you guys, Ash. I am all over the place. Ash, I want to tell you that you have an amazing voice, very sexy. You should drink more when you do your podcast because I think you were drunk as hell when you did Robot Jock, and you sounded so relaxed. It really helped out. I enjoy your voice a little bit more there. Also, Mr. Lion, Big D, love you guys. I think you guys would be the best friends that I would just be so excited to have in my life. I love how you guys are not, you're not afraid to tell a man or to say that a man looks good. You know, you find someone attractive. Doesn't mean that you want to fuck him, but you would.
I think you crashed.
You're smoking while you're driving the truck there, John. I'll take that Lost Boys question for a second. So if you guys recall from Lost Boys, and I might be wrong on this, guys, I'm just going off the top of my head here, but so Max was like the dude that was playing dad, basically, right? So he was like with the mom. He was like the one that appeared like a normal human guy, responsible older dude. And then David was, of course, Kiefer Sutherland. So from what I understand, though, the Frog Brothers like tested Max, and then he like passed the test. So then they're like, "Oh, he's not a vampire. It's David who's the main vampire." But I think Max was still the main vampire. Yeah. So he would be the sire. But like Ash said during an interview with the vampire, depending on the vampire author or the creator of that vampire universe, the rules are all very different. So not really sure who would have been a head honcho in that situation or if it impacted others.
Well, remember in the movie, it's about who turns back to normal when. And so when David dies, a lot of them turn back to normal, even though they've been killed, because it's implied that David sired them and then, like Max sired him. And so I think they would follow him instead of saying, fuck you, because David would say, well, you have to follow him because I have to follow him, right? Like it's like the grandsire to them. But I appreciate the comments about my voice, and I was drunk as hell then. I've been drunk as hell on a lot of our episodes, so Robot Jocks was just a ridiculous film.
Yeah, that was next level drunk on
all of us.
In honor of John Butter Hut,
Yeah. I mean, Big D, it was him last week. That was...
Grino Pigio.
Gene and I came with books of notes and candlelit, recording sessions, and Big D's like, I got my Grino Pigio going. And, you got to have red wine when you review a vampire film. That was your first mistake.
Well, thanks, John, for calling in. And now let's switch gears to a slew of voicemails about National Lampoon's Vacation. Starting with Tom in Crane, Texas.
Tom, Crane, Texas. Howdy, Shat Crew. I was calling to say that I really thought you all did an excellent job on the Vacation movie review. And I was also calling to say that you don't have to air this if you don't want to. I did not realize that I was watching Vacation with nostalgia glasses on. When I have completed 84 hours towards a broadcasting degree, and when I went back and watched Vacation, just like we had to in all my film classes, watch movies, taking notes on the good points and the bad points. After rewatching Vacation, I saw all of your guys' problems, plus more, with Vacation. And after rewatching Vacation, I would give Vacation a white score of 2.75. Thank you all, and I hope you all have a great week.
That's what it's about, Tom. It's about being able to remember a movie fondly, hold on to your memories of that movie and what it means to you personally, emotionally, but be objective while rewatching it.
There were multiple people on Twitter who came to Clark's defense. Oh, he wouldn't have done anything. Go watch the movie. Clark would have done something. He was
DTF.
Oh, he was definitely.
Speaking of people defending Vacation, we got a call coming in from North Carolina talking just about that.
Hey guys, Yvonne in North Carolina. Just got finished listening to the Wally World podcast review. So don't really give a crap about the scores, honestly, but feel like, man, Clark got a bum deal on that review. So not a fan of Chevy Chase necessarily. Don't really think he's all that great, but Clark as a dad, I just feel like he got a fair he didn't get a fair shake. Look, the man made the trip on the triptych. He's like, kids, you want to come see the triptych? Kids are like, well, sure, I'll come in there, but I'm going to fuck it all up by doing my Pac-Man guy and put my star, asteroid guy on there and shoot. They didn't give a shit. He went to AAA. He got the roadmap. He did the triptych. You know what they did? They bitched about wanting to go to Hawaii. And then Ellen's in the kitchen, bitching at him like, do we really got to drive? Can't we just fly? Hawaii sounds great. You want to know what vacations were like in my family? We did one thing. We went fucking fishing every day. We went on vacation for a week. We had to ride there in the damn Cadillac. Dad drove with a DWI like 7 times over, so probably wasn't even legal. We went on vacation. We never did anything but fish. We got on the boat every frickin' morning. There was no bathroom. Fuck snacks. There was a room in the cooler for water for the kids. Only beers for Dad and maybe some cheese and pepperoni and some Triscuits. That's it. That's all you got all day long. Didn't matter how hungry you were. Nothing. That's what we had to do. Go fishing every frickin' day. Day over day. There was no going to Wally World. Man, I would have loved for Clark to have been my dad. He would have, he was in the car, he was driving, he was singing, and the kids bitched about being at, crappy hotels and oh, we got to ride with Aunt Edna. Big fucking deal. You got to go to friggin' Wally World. All in all, this is one of my favorite movies. I watch it all the time. My kids love it. We watch it together. I probably watch it, 10, 15 times a year. And I just feel like Clark got a bad shake, man. A lot of dads wouldn't do any of that stuff. And, he went skinny dipping. He had a good time. Not really the end of the deal. He wasn't trying to sneak weed into Wally World like my dad. And, the kids got to see him freak out a little bit, which, you know what? They're kind of pain in the asses, so they deserve it. Anyway, been listening for a long time. Started with Game of Thrones. Love you guys. Look forward to it every single week. I walk and listen to your podcast. When I had to drive in the office, would listen to it. So you guys are doing a great job. Really appreciate everything you do. Thanks a lot. And thanks for the review. I really, really was looking forward to that one. Talk to you later, guys. Bye.
Okay. So this is how recency bias and nostalgia glasses work. I'm hearing her plea for Clark, and I'm thinking, oh, was he that bad? Yes, he was that bad. Not as bad of a father as a husband. As a husband, imagine if we saw Ellen out there with some dude's dick in her hand. Now, she didn't blow it or she didn't put it in her, but she was going to.
Blow it.
Okay? So that's what Clark did. Clark's a shitty husband. Yes, as a father, his attempt was there. He cared, but he just failed.
I think that we learned about Clark in this movie and in Christmas Vacation that he's like the pre-Instagram dad. Like he cared about doing shit like for show. I don't think like he actually really wanted to be a part of it. I have a friend. She's now a den mother. She doesn't want to be a fucking den mother, but she's a den mother so she can post this shit on Instagram, right? Like that's what they're doing. And Clark is a shitty husband, so...
I had more fun listening to Yvonne's voicemail than I did watching National Lampoon's Vacation. So, Yvonne, thank you for distilling the 10 to 15 viewings a year into something actually funny that I could listen to.
Yeah.
We appreciate you. And thanks for listening.
You're better than Chevy Chase.
Thanks, everyone, for your voicemails. If you'd like to call in and leave us a voicemail, it's 914-719-SHAT. Let us know what you're thinking about the movies we covered, The Usual Suspects, Interview with the Vampire, or anything else you've heard recently. Big D, what do we have coming up next week?
So, Gene, it's that time of the season. College football is about to kick off, so Shat the Movies goes back to the gridiron with Rudy Rudiger, who wants to play football for the University of Notre Dame, but has neither the money for tuition nor the grades to qualify for a scholarship. Rudy redoubles his efforts to get out of the steel mill where his father works when his best friend dies in an accident. Overcoming his dyslexia thanks to his friend and tutor, D-Bob, Rudy gains admission to Notre Dame and begins to fight his way onto the school's fabled football team. This was commissioned by Steve Happy Harry J., the winner of the Fantasy Football League. This is NFL. It came out in October of 93, and I think this is going to have a lot of fans out there. I was not one of them.
Well, thank you to our fantasy winners, Nick and Stephen, for their commissions. Thank you to everyone who commissions and makes these movies possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. You can email us, host at shatthemovies.com, or call us at 914-719-SHAT. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, completing a free anonymous survey to help attract advertisers, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. Find all the information by visiting our website, shatthemovies.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV. We review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all the information on our website, shatontv.com, wherever fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by iTunes, please leave a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D and Ash, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us next week for the following football movie.
After high school, I'm going to play football at Notre Dame.
Chasing a stupid dream causes nothing but you and everyone around you heartache.
The problem with dreamers is they usually are not doers.
Are you fully aware of the sacrifices you're going to have to make?
It's the most beautiful campus in the world.
Having dreams is what makes life tolerable.
Notre Dame is for rich kids, smart kids, great athletes. It's not for us.
Ever since I was a kid, I wanted to go to school here. And ever since I was a kid, everybody said it couldn't be done. I always listened to them and believed what they said. I don't want to do that anymore.
Hey, kid! Not supposed to be here.
Not everyone is meant to go to college.
I need your help.
Why should I help?
I just want to be a part of this university.
You're nuts.
Yeah, a lot of people have been telling me that lately.
Sometimes a winner is a dreamer who just won't quit.
Hey, you guys! My son's going to Notre Dame!
I'm here to play football for the Irish.
I wish God would put your heart in some of my players' bodies.
You're 5 feet nothing, 100 and nothing, and you got hardly a speck of athletic ability. In this lifetime, you don't have to prove nothing to nobody except yourself.
A true story from the creators of Hoosiers.
You ready, champ? I'm ready for this my whole life.
thought that the sketch looked like B.B. Cooper. Like he had
D.B. Cooper.
Oh my! I thought you said D. I thought the sketch looked like D.B. Cooper.
Well, now it sounds like you had a thing that you corrected, and we can't edit it that way.
Cooper.
Okay.